Welcome to another episode of Cultivate. This is a show about you and your journey in the cannabis industry. It's moving fast, but there's room for everyone. Buckle up as we bring you the people and the technology that are blazing the trail.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Cultivate. A little different this time. I'm stepping in for Scott and Drew and introducing Sami from CertiCraft. He's an expert on kind of the record keeping and regulations that Health Canada is requiring from all of our cultivators out there, whether you're a full-time huge scale LP, a medical grower, or right down to our really loved craft growers. So it's going to be kind of fun to have a chat. We're going to talk about the different things that are happening in legislation and regulation. And I know we're all expecting kind of round 2 coming up this spring. So there's lots to talk about. And I know Sami's kind of the expert in the field. So we, as Boveda, really wanted to bring him on and just kind of talk about where we see it going. And I know he has tons to offer to our audience. So I hope we get lots of questions. And I know he has so much knowledge to share with us. So I want to open it up and maybe just let him kind of give him the opportunity to give a little bio, maybe a little hey, how are ya? Sami?
Hey, how are you? Thanks, Jed. I appreciate the intro. It's very flattering of you. So as Jed said, I'm Sami. I'm one of the founders of CertiCraft. We are a company on a mission to help craft growers transition into and thrive within the new regulated market here. And the first product that we have released is a compliance platform, also called CertiCraft, that makes it really, really easy for cultivators to stay on top of all their record keeping and stay audit ready, generate all their monthly reports. And as a result of doing all that, saving growers literally dozens up to 50 hours, typically for a micro, of busy work every single month. And for larger companies that can easily exceed 100 hours every single month in terms of savings. And that's really our focus as a team. How can we make the record keeping side of what you have to do to stay compliant be really easy, and with an interface where you don't have to be a compliance expert, you can learn it in less than 15 minutes. And through building that system, we have become experts at everything needed for record keeping, because we generate all the records for our customers. And there's a lot of things required for Part 11 of the cannabis regulations. That's the portion that has to do with record keeping. There's a lot with monthly reporting to both the CRA and Health Canada. There's a lot more as well. I'm not going to dive in too much because I know I want to give the floor back to Jed here. I don't want to keep talking on and on about what we're doing, because the point of today isn't about CertiCraft. It's about this lovely discussion that's going to emerge, and whatever conversation ends up happening. And like Jed said, I really hope that whoever's here in attendance today asks us lots of questions so that we can make this really pertinent to what you guys want us to discuss.
Yeah, and Sami, I'm curious, with regard to regulations and record keeping, we always talk a lot about SOPs, and that's kind of the end all and be all of record keeping, I would imagine, and what Health Canada is going to be looking for when they come into your facility. Is that correct, or is that okay?
I wouldn't call it the end all be all. I would say it's one of the single most important pieces. For anybody attending who's not familiar with the term SOPs, it stands for Standard Operating Procedures, and it's essentially your contract with yourself on how you are going to run your operations at every single level. Anything you're ever going to do, whether it's sanitizing a room, whether it's using Boveda products in order to create a bulk container so that you keep the moisture, so you save the terps. use your hat term.
Hey,
man. Or if you're literally anything you're ever going to do at your facility has to be have an SOP that goes along with it. And there's a lot of requirements around SOPs, how they are formed, how they are kept as you change them. One common misconception amongst smaller growers is that SOPs are law that is unchangeable. It's true that they are the law for your company, but they're meant for you to kind of create a set of documentation that really expresses how you do things. And so they're meant to be your primary, your documentation to make your life easy to match what you're doing, so that you're just standardizing the procedures that you would do anyway as a grower. And if you do change them, which is totally okay, there's certain things you have to do in order to meet the regulations. For example, if you change an SOP, you have to keep the old one for at least 2 years from the point at which it's changed, available at your facility. So if you're audited, you can kind of show the history of that SOP. And there's a few other things along those lines. And I say it's not the be-all, end-all because every month, if you are a producer of any kind, you're generating many, many, many documents throughout that month. You'll end up with a couple, more than that even, different binders full of documents and records that you've generated every single month if you are staying compliant and actually tracking what you need to be tracking. So and the SOPs, if you've hit like a good set of them, and oftentimes in your first few months, you're going to be like really figuring out, oh, this really doesn't work. We got to change this SOP, and you'll kind of have this evolutionary process. And once that's kind of stabilized, like there's not much that you're doing in terms of SOPs at that point. Maybe you're updating one SOP every month or two as you kind of hit another point where you're like, oh, this doesn't really work for XYZ reason. But what you are going to be doing all the time is generating lots of records in accordance with cannabis regs, a lot of good production practices records, and so that becomes a much bigger aspect of what it needs to be operation on a day-to-day basis. And likewise, the monthly report that you're generating, literally thousands data points across both the B300, the B300A, and the CRA and the CTS Canada. So that's kind of where, from my perspective, really a lot more will be happening. But there needs to be a foundation of good SOPs that actually match what you're doing first.
That's such good information for everyone, because I think there's this fear around SOPs that, like, once you lock yourself into this plan, that then how do you adjust it, or how do you change it if you change your methods, or you want to adopt new products, or you need to bring in, like, for instance, humidity control, or to speak from my side. So yeah, that's interesting to know, because I think there's a lot of fear around that. Just they want to leave Health Canada alone and not get interactive if they can avoid it. But that's
a lot of that has to do as well with the fact that a lot of the smaller growers anyway that are transitioning, like, they don't have any kind of background in compliance or like procedural bureaucracy, so it's scary. And a lot of these growers turn to consultants because they're like, I don't know how to do this. This is like way outside of my comfort zone. And it's really sad to say this, but a lot of the consultants out there are really shitty. They've really taken advantage of small growers. They've charged them way too much money and given them SOPs that are really meant for like a giant 500-person facility. And so you have a lot of the, like, I can speak from the experience of some of our customers, some of our earlier customers. Like, they've had a really hard first 6 months because they had SOPs that were like 500 pages long that were really meant for an Aurora level company, not a little one-person micro in the Kootenays. And
that doesn't make any sense. There has to be a scalability between these kind of services for sure. I want to kind of interrupt our conversation for a quick second just to remind everyone who's in the chat that if you click on the link in our chat box, you're going to receive some rad Boveda swag. So make sure you click on that link and register for that so we can ship you out some goodies. You'll also get a CertiCraft. We translated Part 11 of the cannabis regulations. It's all the record keeping requirements. We translated that to a much shorter document written in a fun way so that it's really easy to understand. So if that sounds like something great to you, you'll get that as part of that package as well. Is it really fun? Let's be honest.
I wrote it. I'm silly. I made it a little silly. I think it's a lot more fun than the regulations. Let me tell you that.
That's scalable. I don't know. Like, it's right here and then it's right there, but it's not here.
Let's put it this way. I've taught a few different workshops and webinars about the regulations where we like literally read through Part 11 of the cannabis regs, and we had over 100 facilities show up to the first one, and not a single person left after an hour and a half of literally reading through the regulations, because I made it fun.
Well, that's what it takes, though, because honestly, to stay tuned into these things and to really like absorb them, you need to make it fun, because it is dry. And we're all from an industry, the majority of the craft growers, and I was a outdoor grower on Texada, growing Texada time warp since I was a kid. And, like for me to think about adopting those regulations and wrapping my head around it to grow indoors would just be, overwhelming, even though I'm, a professional in the industry now, but still I can only imagine what these growers are going through, and they're looking for solutions, and that, to ease them into it. So that's kind of the cool thing about what you guys are doing, and kind of how we fit in too, because it's all about, making sure your flower is as good quality as possible. So it's that's the whole goal of the game, and being certified and staying within the regulations of Health Canada, whether it's within marketing or it's within biocontrol or it's within packaging or it's within record keeping. There's so many different angles that these growers got to play and be compliant in, that there's need for guidance for sure. And that's where a company like you steps in, right?
Thanks, man. Yeah, that's our goal, really. I mean, you look at what's happened with the regulations, and any grower that was growing in the legacy or medical markets, if before, let's say, they were spending 90% of their time on growing and like 10% of their time on like more operational management type stuff, then after getting licensed, now it's like the growing has gone down to like 20 to 30% of their time, and that's all that remaining extra 60% is what Health Canada's regulations has now added to the table, and for a lot of these growers, it's just so overwhelming and so outside of their comfort zones that they really don't necessarily feel empowered to do it. And so for us at CertiCraft, like our goal is to really free all that up, give people a guided workflow where you don't have to be compliance expert anymore. You can click that button that says take cuttings from mothers. That makes sense to you, grower. You understand what take cuttings from mothers mean, and then we'll give you a form that you need to fill out in order to be compliant with the various regulations and reports, and then we generate all that paperwork for you. You just, if you're audited, you click a button and you get the paperwork. If you are submitting a report, you click the button and you get that stuff. One last thing, I just want to bring this back to SOPs, just to kind of mention one last thing around that before we move on too far. Good SOPs are as simple and short as possible. You don't want to commit yourself to lots of different steps. If you can get SOPs that cover everything that you are doing in your facility in like 20, 30 pages, great. There's nothing wrong with that. Like it really should be the simplest language that you can use that really just makes sense to you and your team. And keeping it somewhat vague in the sense of, you don't want to say like, I'm going to add this specific nutrient at this specific time, because if your SOPs say that, then you have to do that. And if Health Canada audits you and you haven't done exactly that, then
you're out of compliance.
Yeah, you're out of compliance. But the thing is, if your SOPs say that, you have every right to change that. You can change it to say, hey, when our master grower decides that the plants need nutrients, they will feed them the appropriate nutrients, and they will record that feeding in this way. And I should say I'm not an SOP expert. Like, my expert is on the record keeping side of the day-to-day operational stuff. But from what we have seen, that kind of stuff is accepted by Health Canada. And there's a fine balance between, vague enough that you give yourself freedom while not being so vague that it's like, when I do the thing, I record the thing. Like, Health Canada's not going to accept something quite that vague, So yeah, really make it about you. And that's the biggest thing I'd recommend is, like, if your SOPs are something that confuse you, just take the time to make them appropriate for what you're doing.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here and ask, where do you see the biggest failure in the last 2 years of government regulation?
Yeah, I think the biggest failure is just that they didn't care about the small growers. Like, you have an industry that's been around for decades, literally tens of thousands of growers who built the industry up. Those same growers are the people who fought for decades to legalize cannabis. It was finally legalized due to their push, and then the government just listened to corporate lobbyists, and you ended up with regulations that were really made around the needs of large enterprises. And the large corporate interests and the government were both excited about that approach. And surprise, surprise, if you have large enterprises that grow shitty cannabis and you try to sell it to a populace that has been using really amazing high quality cannabis, and you try to sell them something that's way shittier and twice the price, nobody's going to buy it. And so a lot of these bigger enterprises and the government, I think, have been surprised at that what should be obvious logic, that people aren't going to pay twice as much for something way worse. and thankfully, it seems that on a provincial level, a lot of provinces are kind of coming around and realizing that, like, okay, we have to support craft. That is what people want. Craft growers can't transition because it's way too hard. So they're just going to continue doing what they have been doing, even though they want to transition. And when that's happening, then guess what? 70-80% of the sales taking place in Canada today are taking place outside of the legal market. You know, like Statistics Canada had this sometime last year, maybe like I forget when exactly, but they released a statistic saying that roughly it was like 65% is what they said of Canadian adults were purchasing cannabis illegally. But if you looked at the actual, if you looked at the price per gram for each market, it bumped up to 70% was the actual volume. But the thing is that survey, it was a survey, right? They sent out a survey to Canadian adults. And what the results mean is that 70% of Canadian adults were comfortable telling the government they were buying weed illegally, which tells you that the real number is way higher. And that's why a lot of these larger enterprises have been failing over the past 2 years, because they kind of did this like stock market play and like, oh, who cares about the product? It's all about the profit. And that's just not something that's going to fly in this industry. So
there's an analogy to be had there between, I say this often to my clients, is like, you turn 19, you walk into the liquor store and you buy the highest content alcohol, the overproof rum, the really crappy, OE beer that's like 9%, because all you're looking for is just, that. And that's what's being offered in most dispensaries, as opposed to, high quality VQA wines or nice, like scotches or whatever. I have a parallel in my mind between that mentality, which I experienced as growing up, to what's happening in the cannabis industry now. And we're on this THC chase, which is fine. I mean, people want to get, for some people that's their goal. They really want to get that high THC. For me, that's not my goal at all. I'm looking way more at terpene profile and kind of overall effect of how it's going to, benefit me. Yes, I do enjoy THC benefits, but I think it's the entourage effect overall that really matters. The combination of CBD, THC, and the terpene profile that's available in that strain. And I just hope we're getting there where the consumer is going to understand that, and that's going to, because the big producers are not going to change their Budweiser mentality of just crank it out as low quality as possible at highest profit as possible until the consumer starts demanding that they don't want that. So I think we're turning a corner. And I noticed, I was reading some articles the other day about how Ontario is going to be allowing terpene profiles to be put on packaging, which I just think is like revolutionary, because at the end of the day, it's really the terpenes that you are going after. I mean, THC is THC. I don't want to say anyone, but it's not hard to produce cannabis that has 20% THC. It is hard to produce cannabis that has specific terpene profiles. Yeah. So I see that as the future of the market. What do you think?
Well, before I answer that question, I just want to say to a point you made earlier that what you've described about like everything being low, the equivalent of like the Budweisers or the Millers or what have you, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily as an option, but the issue today is that it's the only option, and that's what's really problematic.
Agreed.
That needs to change. And I think it's great to have that as an option, because you have people who all they want to do is just get fucked up for as cheaply as possible, and they don't care about like whatever the experience is. But yeah, it's sad to not have quality available as well. As for your question, yeah, I mean, I think terpenes and flavonoids and other cannabinoids. I'd say it's all three, like not just the terps. Like I do think it's important to save the terps. And terpenes are incredible. I've been learning a lot more about them over the past like year or two, and it's super interesting. But I can tell you for myself, like I'm always looking for CBG and CBD when I'm considering cannabis. Like that's THC is something that I don't really play with well anymore. It's been causing more like negative reactions for me. So but CBG and CBD both like really help me like really relax my muscles, relax my mind after a stressful day, and it's really sad that like I can't go to a retail store and find that. Like I can find like maybe like one or two options that they're like pre-rolls that are like a year old and like generally from companies that I'm not excited about. I found a few like interesting. I found like this Canatonic pre-rolls once by Tantalus Labs, and I like Tantalus and what they do and their philosophy. But it's like there's like one option sometimes, and that's kind of how it feels right now going in. Whereas in the craft world, there's tons of people who really care about having great terpene profiles and flavonoid profiles and cannabinoid profiles and having like a really broad spectrum of things. And like anybody who's like cares more about the medical aspects of cannabis is like Health Canada's kind of Health Canada has made it so things that are actually medically beneficial are disincentivized, which is just so crazy if you think about it.
Yeah.
But I've got a question for you, Jed. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if everybody in this audience here has a very good or deep understanding of terpenes and kind of the spectrum of what there is there and like how they affect you both on like just reactive, like how your body changes levels or maybe flavor levels. Could you like maybe give us a primer on the world of terpenes and why you care about them so much?
What it comes down to with terpenes is that they're present at the point of cure, but they do evaporate quite quickly if your humidity level is not at the right zone. So what research has discovered is that between 55% relative humidity is the bottom end, and if you're below that, the monolayer of moisture that's holding the terpenes into the trichome now is gone and allowing the terpenes to evaporate. So whether that's evaporating into your storage bin or into your headspace of your packaging, it's no longer in the flower. So you no longer get to consume it. If you're above 55, then the monolayer moisture is intact, and that's what's holding those trichomes together with the terpenes inside. And so that means when you grind it and you consume it, you get that full terpene aspect and benefit. And at the opposite end of that spectrum, terpenes and everything degrades and you get in the mold zone above 68% relative humidity. So there's a sweet spot where we have to have flower, and I think Health Canada is recognizing that, and I'm sure we're going to see this coming out in 2.0 regulations coming this spring. Is that there's going to be specifications on humidity levels for flower that's being sold, because if you grab a bud and it turns to dust, there's not a terpene, the terpenes are long gone, or not all of them, but
I can't imagine Health Canada caring about terpenes though.
they they will. They care about THC. They care about CBD. They're understanding. They're learning as much as we are learning. It's this is a brand new science for the government. We're the first Western nation to take this on as a legal product, and they're learning as much as everyone else is. And terpene degradation is a huge issue because it really means that you're buying product that doesn't represent what the grower grew and cured, and isn't giving you the full benefit, whether it's medically or recreationally, that you should be getting. So that's where it is with terpene retention. And if you can keep your product between the prescribed kind of, and this is not coming from myself or Boveda personally, this is like third-party lab, guaranteed information, is that we know that if you're not in that range, you're losing terpenes and you're losing them fast. So, and that's why we kind of offer the 58% and the 62% is to, provide an option for people who like it a little bit drier, a little bit moister, but still in that, zone where the terpene shield is creating a monolayer and keeping those terpenes locked in. And one of the things that, education wise is, and we're all guilty of this, is that in the old days, when you had your weed in a Ziploc bag, which we all did, we're all guilty of that. And,
I never
oh, don't tell me that. And you opened it and like, whoa, smells so much. It's like, well, that smell should be locked in the bud.
That's the smell going away.
All going away. Those are the terpenes evaporating out of the bud into the headspace of your Ziploc bag or whatever you were using in those days. I mean, we were all guilty of it. I'm a legacy grower. I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty. But now we know better, and the education getting out there now is that we really know that it's all about rating quality is when you grind it and you smoke it and you taste it and you feel it. That's when it counts. Not when you open the jar, not when you open the bag, not when you, that doesn't count for anything. In fact, that counts for a loss of quality if it's right off the top. Yeah. So things are changing. Education's getting out there. People are understanding it. The terpene, who even heard of a terpene 10 years ago? Yeah. That was unheard of. Like we didn't know. We knew about THC. That was about it. Monoterpenes, sequestered terpenes. Like there's so much going on there. Cannabinoids, flavonoids, and as long as you have the humidity at the right level, you're really locking all those in. So it's a matter of education, is what it's coming down to.
Yeah, I think I first learned about terpenes like 4 years ago, and then at first I thought it was just like a cannabis thing, like kind of like cannabinoids, and then like a year or two ago I realized that literally every plant has terpenes. It's just one of the chemical building blocks of plants, and you have just any kind of fruiting, flowering body has different terpenes inside it, and it's something that's all around us everywhere in nature. So it's been interesting kind of like through cannabis to like learn about something important there, and then to discover that it's not a cannabis thing in the way that I thought it was at first.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like, when you think about lavender, that amazing smell of lavender, that's an oil-based terpene. And that's, you'll get those smells in some cannabis strains. So it's same with mango, like myrcene. To me, some people say it smells like pine, but to me it smells a bit like mango-y. And, mango has myrcene. That's just part of it. Yeah. So yeah, these terpenes are in all things.
So is terpenes... Is terpenes is that like the building block for essential oils? Because as you bring up the example of lavender, that's like kind of where my mind went to. Is that what an essential oil is made of? It's
part of the formula of the building block. I can't say, I'm not an expert in that, so I don't know. But I think the essential oils of the plant contain terpenes as well as other things as well. So that would be a question for someone who has a little more education than myself. That's a little higher pay grade than me. So.
Yeah. I'm paid to talk about weed, not essential oils.
No, we're gonna have to call him the doctor on that one. But who's got a PhD out there? Anybody? PhD? No. Yeah, not this guy. So
let's see if we have any questions from the audience. Hey, audience, I am disappointed in you, audience. Come on, we want questions. We want this discussion to be like what you guys want us to talk about. And, maybe you guys are like really excited about what we've been talking about. And if that's the case, let us know that you don't got any questions because you're just stoked on the conversation. But if you guys have anything you're curious about, like throw it out there. Like the whole point of today is to be here for you and kind of share our two perspectives with a lot of experience and what's required for the regulations and this new legal framework that exists, and kind of be able to help you guys come out of this feeling like you got a bit more knowledge and wisdom and understanding of what's relevant for what you care about and within the cannabis space. So yeah, please ask us questions and we will discuss whatever you bring up.
Hey, do you have any insight, Sami, on what you expect to see in these new regulations coming out from Health Canada?
You know what? I really don't. Like, I have hopes, and I've got to say I don't have as much faith in Health Canada as you do.
You're assuming I have faith?
Well, just because of what you said earlier about how you expect them to have to care about terps, and to me, like, I just don't see that happening. Like, and I think the biggest teller for me is that when you look at the microbial levels and how they've treated that, like Health Canada started regulations with microbial levels that just made no sense. Any organic farmer, any person who's doing a permaculture-based approach is basically being required to destroy the quality of their cannabis by irradiating it, because they're just not going to be able to pass the microbial limits with what Health Canada put in place. And what Health Canada put in place is not based in science. It's based on the pockets of the lobbyists that paid them, and the no other regulated body out there. If you look at Washington, if you look at Colorado, you look at California, any of the other states in the U.S. that have legalized cannabis, their approach is scientific. They're like, E. coli, you can't have that. Different pathogens that are bad for the human body, you can't have that. And they're very specific in terms of that. But with Health Canada, they made the regulations to be just microbial general. as if our body isn't half microbial. Like half of the cells in our body aren't even our human cells. There's just other microbial life. And anytime you go to a farmer's market, the microbial levels of carrot that you're buying, which was if it's the nicest organic carrot you can get at a farmer's market, guess what? It grew in literal shit. That's like that's the best fertilizer. And you know what exists in shit? Microbial life, and that's not like an issue. It's fine. It's great. It's helpful for our gut. And I was hopeful that, when every organic farmer, every permaculture-based farmer, everybody who cares about quality and doesn't want to irradiate their cannabis, there is a lot of people who reached out to Health Canada to say, hey, this doesn't make sense. This is not science-based. It doesn't actually hurt people to have microbial life, because otherwise you'd force people to irradiate tomatoes, and you don't do that. We can't have a sustainable business based off permaculture practices if we have to then destroy the very highest quality product that we created. And I had hoped that they would listen and be like, okay, you know what? We didn't even consider that. We're going to make it so we're only checking for pathogens when we fail a microbial test for you, because that's science-based. You don't want things that are actually bad for humans. But what do they do? But sorry, just to like continue that thought, they've lowered the limits further, so now they're even stricter. This just like went in place in the past couple months, and so to me, like, and that was something that a few of the large enterprise lobbyists, they were lobbying for. This is on the record, and it just goes to show that your interests are on the money side. Like, I don't know what kind of bribery is taking place at the top, but there's something going on where it's definitely not science-based, it's not health-based, and it's not it's trying to actively make things harder for the micros, because, and this makes a lot of sense, and it's brilliant from like an enterprise level perspective. If you're a corporation that cares about nothing but profit, it totally makes sense you do this, and you don't have ethics, which a lot of the big companies have proven that they don't. And not to hate on all enterprises. There are a few out there that are really awesome. Like I think of like Rubicon Organics, for example, or Tantalus Labs. There are some like bigger enterprises that don't fall into this category, but there also are a lot that do. Where was I going with this? Yeah, if you create shitty quality cannabis, your best bet to be more profitable is to ensure that high quality cannabis doesn't enter the market. So to me, it's very clear that this is what's going on. There's this deliberate attempt to keep micro craft high quality growers out of the market so that they can make profit for as long as possible before they just can't keep that floodgates closed. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Feel free to share whatever you're going to share earlier. I just wanted to finish the whole.
No, I was going to jump in and actually contribute to that whole comment, is that, the micros were all like, waiting in queue for licenses and forever, and had invested so much money, and then the rules changed. Then you had to have your facility fully built up, ready to roll, ready for the lights to switch on before you could even get a license. Well, as a micro cultivator, how many $1 million do you have? You don't. Yeah. So that really eliminated many players from the market, which was
because investors aren't going to invest in somebody unless they have that like proof of Health Canada says you can do this.
Yeah, I just think it's it has been mismanaged, and perhaps it's been kind of pushed by lobbyists. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know anything about that, but I don't offer opinion on that because I don't know.
There's a really great. All lobbyists are required to register with the Canadian government if they're going to be official lobbyists. And if you search for cannabis within the lobbyist registry, you'll find a lot of the big LPs there, as well as conglomerates of different LPs. So it's interesting to poke through and kind of see what they're lobbying. But it's all public information. So
we've seen in the last 6 months, 12 months, a lot of the big players, lose a lot of stock value and, cancel some projects and lay off a lot of people. And I guess the industry is kind of resizing itself. But for 2021, do you see the craft growers coming out on top?
I do. Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't know about coming out on top, but I definitely see it continuing to increase. Like it's been increasing exponentially from the beginning. 2018, there was one microcultivation license granted. 2019, there were 19 microcultivation licenses granted. Now we're up to like an average of 3 or 4 every single week, and the frequency has been increasing on a steady basis. So, by the time this year is all said and done, it'll probably be like 100 micros or 120, 150 micros, somewhere there for this year. So we went from 1, 19, 150, and I think that trend's going to keep on going. But if we're going to be practical about that, it really depends on what comes of this 3-year. We're now like addressing the regulations and seeing what changes need to happen. It really depends on that. If the changes make it even harder for micros, like there's already so many barriers to success. Like if there's even more barriers to success, or if the current barriers are like raised even higher, then that's why is anybody going to fight an uphill battle? Like, there's like I live in the Kootenays here, and here like there's been a lot of families who have been in the legacy market forever, who want to transition, who started to try to transition, saw what was required. We're like, we can't do this. Like economically, we will be ruined. We will just not be able to sustain our family anymore. And so they aren't transitioning, even though they want to. And then the police is harassing them. Kids are being taken away from their parents. Families are being broken up, and it's just sad. It's like these people actually want to be good citizens and transition, but it's just there's so many barriers in place right now. I'm actually part of. I joined. There's a task force that just started in the Kootenays called the Kootenay Cannabis Economic Task Force. It's a collection of 20 people from different cannabis industry organizations and government officials from different levels of government, as well as some representatives of different indigenous groups here as well. And it's a 2-year project to have a unified voice for the Kootenays, to really try to show Health Canada what this region cares about, to show the BC provincial government what this area cares about, and really kind of have a more unified voice. Because if there's anything with government that is a truth, it's that if you're just like one person or one company trying to say something, it's going to fall on deaf ears. But if it's a representative of an entire industry, then
collaborative. You have to have a collaborative message, to give it value. I'm going to totally shift gears here, and because we haven't had a single question in this webinar, the first person who fires in a legit, interesting question gets a special prize from Boveda. So go away, folks. Get in there,
and you will also get a virtual high five from Sami. So
do 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 do.
But with the delay, we waiting for a while here.
Oh, I see. Maybe no. Yeah. I'm looking at the chat box. I don't know. Well, I'm sorry we're so boring.
Oh, people are still there, so that's great. Diana Donnelly. Diana Donnelly. I'm glad that you are excited that we're talking about irradiation. Yeah, it sucks. Why would you just completely break up all the nutrients and the chemical bonds and flour that was made so beautifully? Like, it's what's the point of growing like the highest quality flour if you're just going to destroy it after? I'm glad you felt that comment there.
Totally.
You want to shift in a different direction at all, or just?
Well, I kind of covered the points I wanted to, and I was curious about your opinion on what was coming up in the next year, and we kind of covered that. And I think we can wrap it up. It was fun.
Yeah, it was. It's a shame that this audience is so unquestioning.
Well, let's take it as a compliment that we were so informative. They were left with nothing less to ask.
Oh, there's a question. I have a few ounces in a jar beside me, and I don't think I've got enough Boveda packs. How many of which size should I be using, and how often do I need to change it?
I would need to know the weight of the flour in the jar.
A few ounces. Let's just call it 3 ounces then, because it says a few ounces.
A few ounces. Okay. Well, so we kind of have a variety of different sizes, right? Everything from the 1 gram that treats, everything from pre-rolls, 3.5 grams. The 4 gram that's good for up to half an ounce. Our 8 gram is good for up to an ounce. and then the 67 gram goes to a pound. So economically, it would probably make sense to go to the local dispensary or hydro store and pick up a few 8 grams. I don't know how many jars he has. If he has a lot, then maybe it makes sense to buy a bunch of 67 grams. But yeah, the 8 grams would be perfect for him. Each 8 gram is good for an ounce. So fire a couple of those in there, and you'll know if they're done their job, because the crystals inside will start forming. If you can feel the crystals inside the package start forming, then you know that it's given off its moisture through the membrane, and the flower has taken that moisture and to hold on to the monolayer and keep the terpenes intact. So if they get a little bit crunchy, fire them out, put some new ones in, put the lid back on, and you should be good for, if you're using mason jars, they have a great seal, so it should last for quite a while.
Cool. Hey, we got a question at long last. I feel like they needed your prompt of like, I don't think we would have gotten that question if there wasn't the like, wait, whoever, wait, here, high five. I promise that too. I think it was Nick actually, who's one of the co-founders of CertiCraft.
Oh, I don't know if you qualify then, bud.
How do you guys think Farmgate is going to be implemented across the provinces? Really slowly, with a lot of false promises to start off. Like, I really like. I'm excited that they've announced it and that there's some kind of commitment to it. But we've also seen government backtrack on commitments before. I think it will happen. I think it needs to happen. I think BC and Ontario especially are really understanding. I've gotten the sense that BC and Ontario are really trying to help the craft industry now. And it just takes time because it's government. And that makes me excited. Like, I've had lots of conversations with different people working for the BC government, and I really get the sense that they are trying to help craft growers. They've recognized that they screwed up. They've recognized that they need to make things good for craft growers in order to have a vibrant and successful economy here in BC. I haven't had much conversations with people in Ontario just because I don't live there, but people who I know who are involved or know people within the OCS or within different organizations there are also saying similar things, that the government there is really trying to make a difference and make things better for craft. So I do see it changing. I just see it being really slow. We'll see how it develops. But I think 2 years from now it'll be great. But how we get to that point and how long it takes and how many missteps there are is to be determined.
I completely second your opinion, and knowing how the government has rolled out phase 1 and phase 2, but we can presume there'll be many missteps, and it will be it'll be a work in progress as it is currently. So, but the concept is great. I love it. It brings it back to its roots of where cannabis really came from in our country. So that's it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, don't hold your breath. That's what I can say. Christmas is coming, but Farmgate is not.
I feel like this might be a good place to... Oh, there's another question. People like to say that the LPs cannot ship with Boveda inside the carton. Is this true?
No, that's totally false. Boveda can be completely in contact with the flower. There's absolutely no issue there. Health Canada approved. Some LPs choose to ship it just with their packaging. Some ship it within the flower. Some ship it unwrapped in the flower. Some, Sea Vault comes with Boveda inside the lid. There's all the options you want. All of it's Health Canada approved. The only thing that can pass through a Boveda membrane is purified distilled water vapor. And that's both ways. So there's absolutely no concern there whatsoever.
And that was from a person who is not one of my co-founders. So, Diana, I think you win that extra special prize, whatever it is, and a high five from me. Here you go. Woo!
Well, this has been a lot of fun. We should definitely do a regroup at some point in time, maybe in the new year, and maybe
that'd be great.
Yeah, maybe line up some different guests or perhaps different people to contribute some comments. But I've had a lot of fun. So thanks for your time, Sami.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jed.
It's been great.
And just maybe can we do like a quick last two sentence thing on what each of our companies do for anybody who might have joined late, so they know what we're all about?
Definitely. Well, Boveda provides a terpene shield that keeps the monolayer of moisture intact that holds the terpenes into the trichome, therefore preserving the quality that the grower intended, all the way from cure to consumption of the consumer. At the end of the day, that's our passion, that's our goal, and we want to make sure that we can help all the LPs, craft growers, legacy growers, anyone in the industry give that experience all the way through their product line.
Cool. And CertiCraft's on a mission to help craft growers transition into and thrive within the new regulated market. And we've built a compliance platform to make it really, really easy to stay on top of all your records and to save you dozens and dozens of hours of busy work every single month. And I'll share in the comments in about 10 seconds here a link to a video that introduces our company and our products. So if you want to learn more about us, you can check that out.
Great. Well, thanks for your time, Sami. Everyone
Thank
have a good day.
Thank you so much, Jed. Yeah, it was awesome to be here. I appreciate